right, we are here at Dallas Weekly in Dallas Weekly News with interviews with the Lee and Oginni, is that correct? Law firm?
Leo and Oginni. Yeah.
Leo and Oginni Law Firm.
Yes.
And you are representing a person we spoke with earlier, Vincent, who was assaulted in a protest. So thank you both for being here. So let's just talk about, how did you come across Vincent and what made you want to take this particular case on?
Well, honestly, we came across Vincent. We made a stance to represent all peaceful protesters in Houston for free, for pro bono. We're part of the Houston protesters defense team. And just through social media, we came across Vincent. He reached out to us, and that's how we was able to represent him. His video was going viral, and we was able to we was really shocked at the incident that we saw occur on the video in itself. And it kind of aligned with whatever we wanted as far as the stance of representing peaceful protesters, as well as what we do as a law firm for personal injury criminal defense. So it aligned perfectly, and we really wanted to just bring justice to this young man.
Okay. As far as from a legal standpoint, what are you seeing when you see these protests with the police response, as far as from a legal standpoint? Because I'm sure, as you said, personal injury and all that, this must look like what's going on. So how do you, from a law standpoint, approach this and then defend peaceful protesters, which it seems like they don't seem to have many options when it comes to their arrest, their detainment, etc.?
Right, and there's a lot of ways to defend it. It really just depends on case by case exactly what the person was charged with. There's some tactics going on with police forces against protesters that's uncalled for, as far as just hurling them up. There's some things as far as we've come across incidents as some other police officers that you can see, okay, that may be something where police officers will actually bring us way, just really case by case, making sure that we're able to give them proper representation and just know the rights. If you're peacefully protesting within your constitutional rights, your First Amendment, and then you have legal representation here, and making sure that the prosecutors understand that this is something that our defense team will not stand for. Make sure that we secure and do whatever we can to make sure that clients are peacefully protesting and able to explore those rights.
Okay. Do you have any advice for people who would like to go out and peacefully protest and might come into contact with some kind of extra law enforcement, what they could possibly do from a legal standpoint personally?
We do, and if I may take that question. So what we recommend to everybody is, don't fight the issue on the side of the road or the side of the street or in the middle of the street with police officers, because you're just not going to win. And the only thing you can do is make the situation worse. So what we recommend to people, especially those who are peacefully protesting well within their rights, are if the officers are going to arrest you, they're just going to arrest you. Okay, so let them arrest you, let them take you to jail, be peaceful, and when you get to jail, call your attorney, call us. We'll help you get out of jail, we'll help get your bond set, and then when you get out is the time to make that stance against those officers. So in Mr. Doyle's case, that was a much more extreme case than most, where he was clearly assaulted and clearly rights were violated. But to the average, say the average protester who say maybe not physically injured but is just taken in, don't argue with them on the side of the road, because that's how things escalate and get worse. And it's hard for some people to understand, to say, well, I just don't want to roll over and be taken in. But you got to understand that they're the ones with the guns and the handcuffs, and they're going to call more and more officers until you are taken in. So the time to fight is afterwards, and you fight with the legal system using an attorney.
Okay, and that's a good point. I'd like to actually expand on that. I'm sure that there's a lot of potential for lawyers to get involved with this situation and make some change. Has there been any discussion amongst you and your peers about how to get the message out that this is the right way to do it, in a sense, like, you're going to see the protesters get arrested, you're going to go to jail, but be calm and call us? Is there some kind of messaging out that that lawyers are making to say, hey, protesters, we're over here, we've got your back like this? Is there any kind of in your world that kind of information?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Yes, so we've actually been to a lot of these processes and joined them in the march, passing out flyers to educate protesters of their rights. If you want to know about it, go to HTX Houston Legal Defense on Instagram, and you can find out more about your rights. And we have websites, we have multiple attorneys and call both Dallas and Houston to educate protesters on what you can do, what you cannot do, as far as to make sure that your safety comes first. And in this, because if you see with Vincent Doyle, it can definitely get out of hand with police officers use excessive force, especially when it's not warranted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and finally, what progress can possibly be made by lawyers at this time, and actually after this time, once sort of the protests died down, maybe there's some discussions being going, but that's kind of the time when people forget, you know, and then we'll see this again, you know. So is anything being discussed about how to actually hit the target when it comes to the messaging of the protests with the law?
There is, and I like that you said that, because, you know, like they say, as soon as we forget, history is bound to repeat itself. And, you know, when it's not in your face, when it's not happening, people tend to forget how many people's lives are negatively affected by the policies that are in place. So when it's not just directly in front of you, you know, people do tend to forget. So to answer your question, yes, I have heard a bit of discussion, and to be honest, I think it's about time for that discussion to happen. And it goes beyond training, it goes beyond selection of officers. The discussion that I've been hearing really revolves around qualified immunity for the police officers.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes it out of the local level, out of the local jurisdiction, and really brings it up to like a state level, where we have to decide that police officers just don't have a free pass anymore. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the discussion that's really occurred has said, well, what if our doctors, what if our lawyers, what if our accountants couldn't be held personally responsible for their wrongdoing? I mean, if we imagine that world, we'd have a world that's just running amok, with people just doing whatever they want to do with impunity, without fear of any repercussion. So the reality is, we are basically giving officers some training, a gun, a badge, and a whole lot of authority, and just hoping that on Scout's honor, they're going to do what they're supposed to. Now, while a lot of officers are very good, and very few are the ones that, you know, probably have a lot of issues, the bad apples, so to speak. But those bad apples can cause a lot of damage. So the discussion has really been revolving around the qualified immunity discussion, to figure out a way to hold officers responsible for their actions when they pull the trigger, when they use that taser, when they use that excessive force, that they are held responsible and accountable. And, you know, quite honestly, I think they should be. And I think it's about time to really sit down and have that discussion on a governmental level, so we can sort of rein in the actions of those individuals.
Mm-hmm. And on a governmental level, has there been any pushback from law enforcement leadership and officials within your districts, or have you heard about anything else like that happening with other legal and law firms?
So as far as pushback from officers and organizations, I've not heard of specific pushback. Now, that's not to say that it hasn't occurred or that it won't occur. And what I anticipate the pushback is going to be is that increasing the scrutiny regarding officers' actions and making them more accountable will create a more dangerous environment for police officers. Now, again, we anticipate that the argument is going to be when officers have to potentially second guess themselves, then making those split-second decisions that may involve deadly force or may involve the use of escalating force will put them in a more significant, dangerous environment. So I would rebut that by saying, you know, I was in the military for a long time. I was both in the Marine Corps and the Army, and I flew scout helicopters in the Army. So through my multiple Afghanistan deployments, we had a lot of those split-second decisions to make. And we operated from early on in the environment where there were no real repercussions for your actions. You could do whatever you wanted. And then at some point later on, public involvement and public scrutiny demanded that our forces have an increased responsibility for our actions. And I can say that it did not diminish our safety. It didn't diminish our ability to do our jobs. So, you know, with that being said, to the argument that it'll make a more dangerous environment for officers, I would say that is not the case. And in fact, it'll just ensure that officers understand that, yes, when you have a firearm, when you have a taser, when you have the ability to escalate, force, you must think through your situation. That bullet, you own those taser probes. You own every bit of force that you put somebody under. And when you understand that you own that force, you're going to be more judicious in its use, and you're going to make sure that, you know, the instances that you do use it are more than likely justified than when there are no repercussions and you don't have to answer any questions really for those actions.
Okay. And just finally, before we let you go, I wanted to go back to the question of how to protest, because that reminds me of when you talk about force and how that goes into when protesters go out and they're going to be expecting this force. What is the correct way to protest, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's many ways to protest. You know, everyone has their own form of protest. Some people have to do it peacefully. Some people do it by looting. Some people do it by burning places down. We personally choose to protest peacefully. The next way that we must all come to protest is by vote. By June 15th is the last day for registration, so we need to protest by vote. Make sure that we have enough people to protest by registering to vote, and then make sure that we vote not only on the presidential election, but for our local votes as well, local elections, and make sure that we push this movement to protest by vote. That's the best way for us all to come together and to continue this movement, continue this change, and push for true justice.
Okay, thank you very much. And if someone wanted to get in contact with y'all once more, could you give us your, how someone could contact you?
You can contact us by visiting our website at www.helpishere.law and also calling us at 713-280-3204.
Okay, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for your time and your service for everybody down there on the front lines in the protests. We want to continue to support that. And we will have more of this on dallasweekly.com. You can follow us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And as always, we will see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.